Hello everybody. Today I want to share my immigration journey in the UK from obtaining student visas when I was 17 years old and moved to the UK alone to switching to business visas and ultimately obtaining settlement in the UK when I was 28 years old. So the 11-year-long journey, I'm going to share this in one YouTube video so that you can get inspiration, insights, and I will explain what I'm doing now in terms of business consultancy for international entrepreneurs. So keep watching. Okay, so how it all started. So I'm Iranian. I grew up in Iran, born and raised in Iran, spent some time in Switzerland as a child and a teenager. And when I was 17 and just obtained my high school diploma, I moved to the UK on a tier 4 child visa because I was 17 years old, so technically a teenager. I went to this institution called Into, and I did a foundation degree. And after that, I obtained a tier 4 general visa, I think it was called, for my 3-year-long bachelor's degree. Following my bachelor's degree, I moved to Newcastle in the northeast of England, and I enrolled on a Master of Laws program, which is technically called LLM, at Newcastle University, for which I also obtained a student visa. Now, after I graduated, I pretty much had that dilemma of what do I want to do with my life, in terms of career. So there was that. I had some very prestigious internship offers, but I also had to move outside of the UK for those. Also, when I graduated, the post-study work permit, which allows graduates to remain in the UK, wasn't really in place. So I only had 6 months to find a sponsored job or move out. In terms of job sponsorship, those were my options. And a 22-year-old with virtually no experience on his belt, obviously I couldn't really find that role. But at the same time, I had a business idea. See, I was an international student and I really struggled with accommodation as an international student, especially privately rented accommodation. I'm not going to go into my dreadful experience with student accommodation throughout the student years, but I'll just use the word dreadful to kind of sum it up here. Anyways, so I had the idea for this startup, and the product was essentially a property technology platform which functioned in a similar way to Airbnb and Booking.com, but targeted to international students who wanted to move to the UK. I pitched this idea to my university, Newcastle University, and I got endorsed for the former version of the startup visa called the Tier 1 Graduate Entrepreneur Visa. So I got that visa for 1 year. After that 1 year, I could have switched to the 3-year-long Tier 1 Entrepreneur Visa, or I could have just extended the Tier 1 Graduate Entrepreneur Visa. I pitched it to the university again, I got another endorsement, but I just saw it more feasible to just get the 3-year visa. So showed around £50,000 in investment funding, and so I got the 3-year-long visa. Now those 3 years and working on the business, those were the hardest. So, year 1, year 2, year 3, I was competing with a competitor who had around £80 million of funding. And here I was with 50K, and it was just me, one-man band as they call it. Anyways, navigating that competition was extremely challenging. But what I tried to do was to really emphasize the factor of innovation and doing something differently. So for example, in 2018, what I did, and I was the first one to do this, was the introduction of virtual tours, 360 imagery of properties on the website. Now, initially what I did was I hired these two people to, on a freelance basis. I hired them to go into these halls. I paid for it, to go and obtain the 360 imagery, and then we would upload it on the website. That gave me a massive advantage over any other competitor. I mean, after about, less than a year, they all went and did it too. Nevertheless, it was about navigating that competition and, essentially creating this company based on my story as, a foreign graduate, who has started this company and focuses on other international students. It was really instrumental in creating those high value contracts and partnerships. So fast forward to year 3, I hired a total of 13 people over the course of 14 months, but I created basically 4 jobs for which I hired these people for, because some people would quit, do all of that. So really went through that experience as an employer. And bear in mind, at this time, I was like around 25 years old. I never had a full-time job myself, but I became an employer. I had to do all the compliance steps, job advertising. I had to interview these candidates, I had to create the jobs in a way that would keep them motivated and, to attract skilled people. So most of the recruitees were actually graduates who were looking for some experience. So food for thought, if you're trying to hire people, there is a lot of factors that go into that. And I'm happy to help you with that part as well as a business consultant. But I will get into that later. Anyways, year 3, we do all of this and we scale the business to 30 UK cities. By the end of year 3, the company is now in a position to attract funding. At this stage, it would be seed funding, because the pre-seed funding, I did it myself. So it would have been around that. We were actually getting approached by venture capital firms at that point. However, in March 2020, just when my initial Tier 1 entrepreneur visa ended, and I applied for the extension, something called COVID happened. And the issue with COVID was it literally diminished the business on many aspects. And the reason was that, I didn't have that confidence that we can book students into these properties anymore, because what if things would go wrong? What would be the legal implications? So there was all of that, and getting funding with COVID and all of that, it just made it a bit unfeasible, so to speak. So I made this really difficult decision to just seize the company's operations and potentially pick it back up at some point in the future. Anyways, I extend my Tier 1 entrepreneur visa anyway. One more thing, by the way. Just before my Tier 1 entrepreneur visa ended, I got into this program by NatWest, so the NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerator. That was a former legacy endorsing body for the innovator visa. So I had that option if I wanted to, but there was really no point because there was only 4 months left until my Tier 1 entrepreneur visa's expiry. And I already did fulfill all the conditions, job creation and investment. So anyways, I extended Tier 1 entrepreneur visa, and as I do, around 6 to 7 months later, I became eligible for indefinite leave to remain / settlement on the basis of being in the UK for 10 years. So, after that, I really navigated the job market for a bit. I had a role at a startup as a head of marketing for about 6 months, but by this point, entrepreneurship was really instilled in me. So I thought, I need to get back to this. This is in my blood now. So I thought about resuming study flats, but at the same time, I really gravitated towards a consultancy business, because as a foreign entrepreneur myself, I really sensed that lack of support, especially from someone who has been in that journey and focuses on this niche. So I became the very first business consultant in the UK to focus on international entrepreneurs and a business consultant who has been through this journey as a migrant himself. So January 2023, I officially launched this consultancy and I start doing it. I've worked with great founders up until now, very, very credible and intelligent founders. And to be very honest, I'm very passionate about what I'm doing. So the food for thought and perhaps the marketing part of this video is that if you are an international entrepreneur and you're considering either the UK or any other country that you want to set up a business in, I am, based on my experience of both navigating an immigration system, but also scaling a tech business in the UK, I offer that insight in a multi-dimensional context. Just recently, I have actually partnered up with an OISC regulated immigration advisor, so I can refer my clients to this advisor. So really, you're getting the full scale service here if you're considering the UK as this journey. If you have any more questions, or if you want to find out more about how my services work, what I help with, or if you have any questions, feel free to navigate to my website, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. And on the last note, I know the immigration journey, I know how stressful it can be. It really isn't made for everybody. It really isn't. And if you have moments where you feel demotivated, anxious, even depressed about it, it's very normal. And all I can tell you is hang in there, because it's not meant to be easy at all, but with the right mindset and prioritizing a unique strategy to proceed, you will succeed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.